this week, an old Steve Harvey video got posted where he was talking about how he couldn't even talk to atheists because they're just such idiots for not believing, and where do they get their moral barometer anyway if they don't have religion. If you want to see the video, it's in the description below. But I was struck by the phrase moral barometer, because typically when we hear theists accuse atheists of being immoral, they talk about a moral compass. And that kind of makes sense because a compass would point in a certain direction. So we think of a moral compass as pointing in a certain direction. It points you to either morality or to sin or somewhere in between, and those in-between areas seem to change depending on interpretation of Leviticus or whatever other Bible verses or Quran verses or Torah verses you want to use. But Steve Harvey may actually be onto something with this moral barometer idea. As social pressure changes, so does most religious morality. You start off with very little social pressure and you end up with bigotry. With enough social pressure, you end up with tolerance. They may not be happy about it, but they're going along with it. Somewhere in the middle, there's the adherence to any new laws or social norms, but man, are we going to hear them complain. In all of his idiocy, he may have actually come up with a really good analogy for how religious morality works. That as pressure is applied, the morality changes and the interpretation of whatever verses that had been used before gets shifted from being the strict word of God to an allegory for the time and subject to interpretation, and it's actually more of a metaphor than a strict adhered to law. So whereas a lot of religious morality seems to really shift with a lot of pressure, non-theist, non-religious, atheist, humanist morality seems to run a more steady course. And while it may shift as new information becomes available, it is because it is new information, not because of new social pressures, for the most part. There are exceptions to this, of course. Not every atheist or humanist is 100% correct on the morality scale all the time. That we're human. It doesn't work that way. But generally speaking, when it comes to civil rights and human rights, you see non-religious people tending to be on the right side of history more often because they aren't using a book from the Bronze Age to help them decide what is right and what is wrong. And they're not using the whims of a petty god who thought that genocide was a perfectly acceptable way to correct mistakes as their gauge for what is moral and what is not. Well, that's it for Sacrilegious Sunday. I'll see you tomorrow for Mom Monday. Bye.